All right, boys. So, in this next part, I want to discuss my first ever clear cut mistake, quote unquote, kind of mistake ish mistake in real estate. And that was trying to do the rehab under the radar. I know that a lot of flippers and a lot of people in real estate that are hands on DIYers do this all the time, all throughout the country. They get away with as much as they can and they weigh the risks of what happens if they get caught, how much is the fine, etc. Do I need to open up drywall to show the work I did, get it inspected, and how much will be the fines? What's the process for my state, what have you? Um, it's oftentimes not discussed very much about whether or not they get permits and what all is involved. And there's the challenge of like hiring licensed contractors to do all the work versus being more hands-on. The DIY guys, there's so much advantage to um, just being able to do the work yourself under the radar because there's limits to what you can do without licensing on your own property. So I didn't want it be on the radar. I thought I could do all my rehab and just never be noticed, that I could gradually improve the property over a slow period of time and have plausible deniability as to how much the house was bought like this versus how much I actually changed to it. And especially trying to use used materials, how would they know if it wasn't like brand new wood in some sistered studs or whatever? How would they know if that was sistered before I bought it or what have you? So I thought, as long as I'm never on the radar, I could just fix up the house under the radar, keep the costs really low, not have to pay for permits, not have to pay for general contractors, just do everything. And I have the skills to do that, and I would have done a great job, and it would have all been up to code because I would have been studying every step of the way with ChatGPT's help, with YouTube's help, how to do things properly and up to code. But not have to worry about any red tape. I hate governmental red tape, and I don't even see it as being unethical to try to stay under the radar and do things on your own property without getting the proper permits. And it comes down to enforceability. So that's just my view. I just think that it's a overreach of government that you have to get permits at all. That's my opinion. I don't think you should have to get permits. At best, the government should be able to step in if when you try to sell the property or rent it, if the renters complain or report to the government unsafe conditions, um, then the government can step in and see like, wow, this is really shoddy work. This is unsafe. Or if you try to sell and they make a complaint, then the government can step in and then see like, oh, this needs to be improved. But if you're doing the work on your own property and you're not selling and not renting yet, I think they should stay out of that for one thing. And only at the point of renting or selling would there be a risk of potentially them stepping in if a complaint is made. And if you do really good work and complaints are never made because it's all super excellent work, then the government should at no point be stepping in. That's my view. And so that's what I think is fair. And that's why I don't think it's unethical to attempt unpermitted work. But I did get caught doing the unpermitted work. I ultimately had to pay $215 in fines. I had to pay a $140 fine to the building department, and I had to pay a $75 fine at court to the code enforcement division of the city, of the ghetto that I was doing my first rehab in. So basically, one day I was on the phone. I was building a wooden ladder because my aluminum ladder got stolen. That was technically another mistake. I left the wooden ladder out, leaned up against the side of the house, not wanting to fiddle with it every day. So I just left it there every day, and I left it there over the winter, just leaned against the house. It was really locked in pretty good. And one day I just went there and it was gone. So somebody stole my ladder, and so my solution was rather than buy a ladder or hope, cross my fingers someday I can find another free ladder because I found this one near the trash. So I got it for free. Um, Set out at the side of the road with somebody's trash day garbage. So, anyways, that was like a fluke incident to be able to get a free ladder, and I'm not going to buy an expensive ladder, especially a new ladder, and put it in the ghetto. It'd be stolen for sure. And I wanted to be able to leave the ladder out there so that I can not have to deal with bringing it home each day or putting it away each time. But ultimately, that was a mistake. So I was building this wooden ladder outside, and I was trying to tarp the roof, which is full of holes everywhere, and low spots and craters, and it's caved in some spots. So I was trying to get things tarped, and that was the extent of what could be seen from the road. Just a wooden ladder in progress, and if you're looking up at the roof as you drive by through the trees, you could see some tarp going up with some sandbags on top. That was the full extent of what you could see. As far as inside, I did a little bit of sistering some studs in a small area where I was going to be putting my ladder that I built on the inside, leaning toward the outside wall. And the walls are so rotted from weather damage in certain areas of the house that I needed to shore up that section in order to be able to trust my weight leaning against the house so that I make sure I don't like fall through or rip through the wall or something with my ladder. So I shored up some of the studs there, and that's about it. I really didn't start tearing down all the walls or a full demolition or anything. All I did was remove trash, shore up a section of wall, build an internal ladder inside the house so I could access the roof to do tarping work without having to have a visible outdoor ladder. But then I realized I need that visible outdoor ladder to be able to reach the soffit and fascia work, or the eaves, to be able to fix or build the eaves. So I needed outdoor ladder as well. I was building a wooden one. So that's all I had done. And already, you would think like code enforcement might notice if you have a big crew and they can clearly see you demo the whole house down to the studs and that you had a lot of construction going on, and that clued them in like, wow, there's a major rehab going on here, and now we're going to look into it and red tag it if they don't have permits. But I was wrong. They just saw a partially built ladder and a little bit of tarp on the roof, and boom, red tag. So like I said, I was in that process one day. I was on the phone sitting in my car right outside the property. A code enforcement official drove up. I recognized the car. I saw code enforcement on the side. I was like, uh-oh, I hope that's not for me. But I thought maybe it's for the house across the street, which already had a red tag. And so I'm like, yeah, they're probably on the city radar. They did a ton of work very quickly. They had new windows, new doors that would draw the city's attention quickly. Like, wow, some work's being done here in this abandoned building. So I figured that was why. I had no new windows, no new doors. So there was no evidence of major renovation work on mine. So I thought I'd be not bothered by the city. But I was wrong. And my logic now on this is if you buy a very decrepit, rundown house and you're working on it, even if there is no major evidence of major rehab, any work you do on it, if they see it's being actively worked on at all, that it's no longer abandoned, it's now being addressed, just that alone, they want to see a permit. Now, if you had a house that was never abandoned, that was well maintained, you bought it with maybe only a month vacancy since the last renter from another landlord that's getting out of the business or whatever, and you were fixing that up, maybe the city would not catch you because the house had no evidence that it was abandoned. So maybe they would assume it's like just normal maintenance work. But a clearly abandoned, clearly heavily dilapidated house that is like falling apart and clearly dangerous structurally, and the roof is starting to fail and walls are sagging and leaning and uneven visibly from the front, and there's a jungle of overgrowth in the front yard to where you can barely see the house through all the trees and garbage and brush growing in the front yard, they automatically will red tag you if they see you working there at all. Maybe even just cutting down trees and just trying to do some lawn maintenance. They may red tag you just from that alone because they want to see a permit immediately. If it's that type of bad property, they know you're in order to use this property, you have to do thousands of dollars worth of rehab work. It has to be permitted level work. You're not going to be able to turn such a major problem house around without doing so much work that it would require permits, because it would exceed the $300 minimum threshold of work where you don't have to get permits to do under $300 worth of work. But they would know, like, this needs thousands worth of work, so therefore it has to have permits at some point, and we want to see them posted immediately before any work is started. That mentality I did not know about. So that's new information. I thought in the ghetto they would be happy just that somebody bought this major project house, this headache house that nobody would want. That's how I thought they'd think about it. Like, man, I'm surprised anybody would fix this junker. That's nice that we're going to get rid of one of our abandoned homes in our city that's liability. It might collapse on somebody, whatever. We're happy someone took on this project. We're not going to bother this person. If they want to work on it alone without a big team, they're on a shoestring budget, obviously, then there's not a big crew. Yeah, we don't expect him to pull permits. He's just a solo DIYer. We're just happy he's willing to do it. I genuinely thought that would be their stance, and that's why I thought there's nothing unethical about it. Literally, if a law is unenforceable or would not be enforced, if there's a wink and a handshake by the police, they're like, yeah, we like what you're doing, keep going. Then you're not doing anything against the spirit of the law. Maybe against the letter of the law you're violating, but not the spirit. And that's how I've taken it when it comes to mixing morality and law abiding. That's a big factor. Like, for example, if you have a police officer behind you and you're driving 55 and a 50, he's going to eventually pass you. Like, you should be going like 57 or 58 and a 50, which is usually the flow of traffic. But 55 and a 50 is 5 miles over the speed limit. Technically, that's illegal. If you go actually 50 and a 50, you're going to be causing people beeping, anger, swerving around you, dangerous traffic conditions, because people get road rage and they try to scare you by either going around you and then cutting you off and slamming on their brakes in front of you, so you have to slam on your brakes to avoid an accident. I've had that happen. Or they will lane change outside of your lane and then almost clip your front end when they do switch in front of you at a high speed, so that there's only inches away from your bumpers. And if they were to miscalculate, they could hit you, and it would be, what's that maneuver? Pit maneuver that cops do. A pit maneuver is where they slam into your front end and cause your car to start to spin and lose control. And people have died from pit maneuvers. And they basically do a psych almost pit maneuver on you to punish you and stress you out for driving too slow. And too slow in their eyes is going the speed limit or slightly above, but not enough above to be at the flow of traffic above. So that's what I mean when I say, like, following the law. I try to do it within reason, but you have to be a safe driver, not create those dangerous traffic conditions where people are doing almost pit maneuvers on you and almost threatening their own life, your life, and other people's lives, just because you're trying to be a stickler to follow the letter of the law rather than the spirit of the law. So that's why when it comes to morality and legal compliance, I think there has to be some reason behind it, not just robotic, perfect, I will go 50 or 49 and a 50. If I go 51, then I have sinned against God and I am on my way to hell for being a sinner. No, that's not true. And maybe if you feel convicted that way and you feel in your heart, if you go 51, you've sinned. And if you sin willfully, you will be proving you're not truly a Christian. So at that point, you are on your way to hell if you don't repent and get back into the Spirit. You can't be in the Spirit and sin willfully. That's impossible. And you can't go to heaven if you're not in the Spirit. You have to be in the Spirit to go to heaven. When you die, you better be in the Spirit, right with God. If you're not right with God and in the Spirit when you die, you're going to hell. Once saved, always saved is a lie. Okay. So that was my approach. I don't feel it was ethically wrong. I took the gamble. I thought very confidently I'd be able to pull off a Stealth remodel, and I was wrong. I was dead wrong. Also, the property across the street, they got red tagged first. I got red tagged second. After their initial red tag, they pulled a permit for non-structural repairs only permit. And then they did not disclose that they had already done a ton of structural work and were continuing to do more structural work to the extent that they replaced like 70% of the structure on the entire property. There was new wood everywhere. And somehow, I don't even know how. I guess once you're red tagged, that the city inspectors come by and look through the windows once in a while or ask for a walkthrough if you're there. I don't know how that works, but they found out, the city found out, that they were doing a lot of structural work despite their permit expressly being a non-structural only cosmetic permit. And so I guess they made the city building department, building commissioner so angry that he ordered the demolition of the entire property, which was a property that was primarily brick and then all this new structural wood. It was solid, surely up to code by a very experienced team that does a lot of renovations in the area. And top notch work, and it got demolished. Now, that was like a warning to me between my own red tag and then the building across the street getting the demolition order. I'm like, okay, I'm getting permits for everything now. I ended up working on getting my permit within like a week or two of getting my red tag. I was on the phone with the building department like 10 days later, asking questions, explaining my situation, explaining what I did. And they said, well, you haven't even done more than $300 worth of work, so you don't even technically need a permit yet. And they said, you should be fine with what you described that you've done so far. You are not yet in illegal territory. I was like, oh, wow, that's great. So I was kind of glad. Might as well get red tagged early than later, where maybe you'd be in more trouble because you did more work that was unpermitted. You're better off to get red tagged right away. If you're going to get caught, you're better off to get caught right away. So I applied for a roof replacement permit. That was the suggested first thing you should do by the guy working the front desk of the building department. And so I complied with that. He even helped me file the application for the permit. And I submitted it, and I was waiting. And while it was under review, and I hadn't received a call back yet on it, I received a summons to court. I'm like, what? Summons to court? Why are they escalating this? I very swiftly and promptly got on top of the permit getting process. Why am I getting it escalated? Well, it just turns out there's no communication between the building department and the code enforcement department. So if you get the code enforcement department on your case, you could get a permit, and if it's, you can apply for a permit, but if you don't have the permit posted, I guess they'll just drive by. Like, maybe this is what I think happened. This is their policy. Like, okay, I put the red tag on your house. I'm going to come back in 2 weeks. I'll mark my calendar. And if I don't see a permit posted on the window, I don't care if you've stopped all work, complying with the red tag, which says stop work until all code violations have been addressed or whatever, which is stupid wording because you have to do work to address code violations. But anyways, what it really means is go get a permit. That's what the red tag really means. So I was working on doing that. But basically, if in 2 weeks they don't see a permit posted, which is very short time, and I think in most parts of the country you'd have a lot longer, but I just was unlucky. In my part, it's that short. So only 2 weeks. If they don't see a permit posted, they automatically summon you to court. Wow. And I had already had my application on file, but they don't even know that. The building department doesn't reach out to code enforcement and say, hey, just in case if you're thinking of summoning this guy to court, just know that he applied for a permit and we're still reviewing it. They don't do that. So you would have to do that. Or you would have to maybe post like a waterproof printed photo evidence that you've applied for a permit next to your red tag on the window, so that if he sees something, he might walk up like, huh, what's this posting next to the red tag? and he'd read it, and he'd see photo evidence and a note to him that you have applied for a permit, or you do the homework, make the calls to find out who is the officer on your case that gave you the red tag, the code enforcement officer. You reach out to him and you provide him with evidence and tell him on the phone that you have applied for a permit and you're waiting for it. You got to do this within 2 weeks, or else he will summon you to court. Once you're summoned to court, you're guaranteed a $150 fine where I'm at in my ghetto that I'm working at. But if they're lenient on you and they see you've gotten your permit and you explain yourself well enough and satisfy them to some degree, they can give you a adjustment to a $75 fine. And that's what happened to me. So basically, it was almost unavoidable to have to go to court for me. I even told the building department, hey, look, I got summoned to court, but you guys know that I've been in here several times. I've got my permit. I've been back and forth bringing you guys all the paperwork you wanted. And yet, and I've submitted my permit. You know that it's on file. It's pending approval. And I did this before I even got summoned. So would you guys be able to talk to this code enforcement officer and get him to waive the court appearance? And they said, yeah, for sure. The building department will get this thrown out. Don't worry about it. And I said, well, what if it's not thrown out? Maybe I should double check. Like, should I call you guys to make sure you did that? He's like, yeah, I guess you could. Call us next week. So I did that. I called next week, and they said, oh, we'll leave a note to the building commissioner, and he'll get back to you. Never did. I called the next day. They said, oh, we'll look it up. Just give us your name and what's the address. Okay, we'll look into it and we'll get back to you later today. Oh, great. Okay. Never got back to me. I called again the next day. Yeah, you guys haven't been getting back to me. I'm trying to talk to someone about whether or not my court case has been dismissed. You guys said it would be by the commissioner, that he would talk to the code enforcement department and get it dismissed. And they said, the commissioner's out right now, but we'll have him call you back later in the afternoon if you leave your name and number. I said, okay, that sounds good. Never called back. Next time, I called again. I said it again. This time, they gave, they put me through to the building commissioner, and he said, okay, what's your name? What's your number? Okay, I'll look into it. I'll call you back later this afternoon. Never called me back. And I called back. Each time I called back later in the afternoon, if they didn't call me, like near their closing, like an hour and a half before they closed, I would call back as a final call, like, oh, they're going to be going home soon. I better find out, because they said they'd call me right after lunch, and they never called, so I'd call at like 4 p.m., and they close at 5:30. I'd be like, so I was told I'd be called back. What's going on there? They'd be like, oh, the building commissioner already went home for the day. So it was phone tag for time after time. I must have done like 7 days of these attempts. And finally, I went in person as well. And he was in a meeting, so he couldn't come out. So I left my information on a piece of paper, and that day he called me back. So I think if you go in person and they write down your stuff with evidence that you were there physically, they're more likely to actually call you back. If you just call by phone, they just won't call you back. That's like their policy, which is obviously completely bush league, completely ridiculous and full of lies. They kept lying and saying they'll do stuff and not doing it. And it turned out he never did call the code enforcement ever. And when I finally got the phone interview with the building commissioner directly, because he finally called back after I went in person after all these failed attempts day after day after day, and I'm right near the court summons date where I have to go to court. After all of that, he says he doesn't know what I can do. That it's up to the code enforcement officer to drop his own case. It's not up to him. And I said, well, could you call him for me, or should I call him? He said, that would be best if you call him. So ultimately, they said the front desk said that he would get it dismissed. He never even made an attempt, nor did he care. And he tried to just give me the runaround and phone tag with me until I'd leave them alone. They don't care. They don't want to help you, and they just don't care at all. And they don't communicate to the other departments at all. and they don't want to. And they don't care if you have to go to court. They just don't care about you, period. They pretend they do, and they're polite on the phone, and then they ignore you and lie to you. So then I finally gave up because it was 2 days out from the court summons date. And I was like, okay, I'm going to call the code enforcement officer and make my own case and tell him everything I've said here. I don't think it's going to work. I just don't think me having zero authority that I'm going to be able to persuade this guy who already did the paperwork to summon me to court that he's going to just drop it. I don't believe it. So I didn't bother. And it turns out I was right. There's no way he would have because of what the court went like and how the vibes were. I just know it. So I went to court. There were like 3 city inspectors that were there with name tags and everything. And they were code enforcement officer and inspectors. And they have everyone that they summoned to court come on the same day. It's always a Wednesday at like 3 p.m. or whatever, or 1:30 p.m. on a Wednesday. Everyone gets summoned for the same day on a Wednesday. The judge handles all the cases in a rapid-fire manner. People are called up one after the next, and you can make your case, discuss things with the judge. The code enforcement officer can tell the judge, "Oh, we're gonna give them an extension, or we're gonna just give him a fine and let him go. He's got his permit now, or he cleaned it up." And so they'll like kind of defend you and get you out of there if they're happy with the arrangement you make with them before the court case. So basically what happens is you check into the building, you sit down in this room, and like 50 other people are there that were summoned by one of the 3 code enforcement officials. And then they ask you to sit in the center of the courtroom. If you're sitting on the sides, they ask you to move to the center. And they have a guy come around with a clipboard taking notes, asking each person who you are. The first person to go around the room was a court bodyguard guy, a sheriff or whatever, or cop, that his job is like, he's like the court bouncer. He's got a gun and all this stuff. He walks around with the clipboard asking you what your name is and whether this is a code violation, building code violation related thing or not. Some of the people there were not for code violations. It was like regular court, but 99% were all for code violations. And then after that, he works with the code enforcers. The code enforcers come out next, and he like advises them, "Oh, that one's a code violation, that one," and he like kind of helps them out because he just did a little bit of information gathering ahead of time. The code enforcement guys walk around asking people like basically, are you one that was summoned by me according to his name tag? Were you summoned to court by me? And is this a code violation? And then he just finds each person that he summoned in the crowd, and he'll talk to you. And he basically just says, "Did you get your permit?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, I need to see that." And he said, "Okay, so you're going to get a $150 fine. Oh, I remember you. You drove away that one day when I was there," he said. And a whole bunch of us were there for this one. And we red tagged it and put up a no occupancy sign on the window. And I said, "Yeah, I saw you pull up in a white car, and I waited for 3 minutes to see if you were for me or for the building across the street. I waited for you to get out. I was willing to talk, but you never got out of the car for a few minutes, so I left. I was heading out that day anyway, so I just left." And so that was that. Now, I wonder if I would have stayed like for 6 minutes and he finally did get out of the car, would he have talked to me? Would it have made any difference? I lean toward no. I don't think it would have. I think he still would have said, well, maybe if I was like really nice and he was in a good mood and he liked my vibes and I explained, "Oh, I'm fixing this place up." And he said, "You know, you need a permit, right?" And I said, "Oh, really?" And he said, "Yeah, you need a permit." I'd say, "Oh, well, I didn't think I needed one until I'd get into major rehab work. I thought you wouldn't bother me unless if I'd begun like full demo or, you know, some major part of this project. So far, I've just been removing trash and trying to get tarp on the roof." And then he could have said, oh, well, if that's all you've done so far, then you should still be in the clear, but you need to get a permit. We want to see permits on really rundown houses like this before we see you working at all. That's a preference. Otherwise, we're going to pretty much red tag you. And I'd say, okay, I'll go get one then. And he'd say, okay, I want to see that permit next time I come through here in a couple weeks from now. You better have a permit up there, and I don't want to see you working here until that permit's up. And I'll say, okay, then I'll stop the work until I get a permit then. He'd say, okay, that's good. Just don't let me see you out here again until that permit's up. And that could have ended with no red tag and no court summons, no nothing. So in hindsight, that's a possibility. But he also could have said, no, you and I both know you're going to be fixing up this place. Otherwise, you wouldn't have bought it and you wouldn't be here working on it. It's a trash dump. And so you need to go get a permit, and you should have had one by now. I'm going to red tag this because this is a liability. It's unsafe. And we're going to put no occupancy sign on it, basically condemning it until it's brought up to code. And that's that. And I'd be like, okay, well, I'll go get the permits and everything. He'd say, okay, do that. And maybe he would have said, and by the way, you will be summoned to court if you don't have a permit posted here when I come back in 2 weeks. So you better get on that quickly. And I say, okay, thanks for letting me know. I will do that so I can avoid court. So I might have gotten like a warning that was more clear on the deadlines of things. That would have been helpful information. So it would have been better to have talked to him. The odd chance he'd let me go without a red tag, or to get that clear warning and deadlines from him. But because I drove away, I pretty much just opened myself up to just being pretty ignorant and just doing the best I could with ChatGPT's help, just strategizing the best I could, and it still failed. Even though if they were doing their part and there was enough interdepartmental communication and stuff like that, I shouldn't have ever had to go to court. Everything should have been settled. And they said what I did was technically not illegal, that I was still under the $300 in repairs limit where you don't need a permit. So by the letter of the law, I should not have paid any fines. But ultimately, when I told the building department about the court summons and they said they would get it dismissed, it was on that day that they told me, by the way, your permit has been pending for some time when normally we'd process it quicker because the commissioner wanted photos to go with it of the roof before he does the roof replacement permit sign off, before he approves of that and gives you the permit. So I just happened to have a picture of my ladder and the little area of wall that I had shored up there, and a picture of the hole in the roof that I was accessing to get onto the roof above the ladder. I brought those pictures just to show photo evidence of the extent of work I've done being well under $300 worth of work, just to prove to the building department that I should not get a fine and I'm still legally okay, according to their own rules about the $300 minimum before you're required to get a permit. So I ended up submitting those two printed 8x5x11 sheets of paper that were black and white photos. I submitted that then and there, and ChatGPT told me to bring those, so I credit ChatGPT with that I even had it that day. I submitted that, and because I submitted it, I was able to get the approval and get the permit actually signed over to me then and there that day. When I was only going there to try to get the court summons dismissed, I ended up getting my permit, so that was nice. And the permit really helped me when I went to court. So anyways, I had to pay, when they gave me the permit, it was like a $150 inspection fee and like $250 permit fee, and then it was $140 working without permit fine, which I thought was unfair and bizarre that they gave me that fine, since I was told by multiple people at the front desk and by phone that I was still within my legal rights and under the $300 range. So why did they give me the fine if I was still fine? And they said I should be okay. I didn't get that. But I never talked to the building commissioner personally about it. Maybe they didn't relay the information to him, and he just blanket gave me it. So that was really annoying. But I didn't question it because they didn't indicate to me I could challenge that. So I'm like, whatever, I'll just pay the stupid or might have $140 or $115. I'm not sure what the fine was. I think it was 140. So anyways, I just paid that. When I paid for the rest of the permit, the total was $410. I paid it downstairs, and then I brought the receipt back up there. Once they saw I paid it, receipt in full, then they handed me the permit, which they printed on their special printer, and I now had permit in hand. And I took a photo of it and created copies, which I brought the copy to court, and I posted the permit on the window of the rental property. Oh, and by the way, I had to do the permit application as a homeowner builder. That way I could do it myself. I didn't want to hire a roofing company. I wanted to do the work myself. And I told the building department I want to do everything DIY. I have a shoestring budget, trying to keep the costs low. And a homeowner permit technically is for non-structural work or minor cosmetic work, but maybe they'll extend it to more structural work if you live on the property. But it's up to the discretion of the building department commissioner. He can give you the permit for more extensive, including structural work, if he thinks he just feels like it that day. It's really up to him. So I said, and in order to apply for homeowner permit, you have to check off a box that says I plan to move in, or check the box that says I live on the property presently. Now that box is completely out of the question to check off because I can't prove I live there and I don't live there. But I can check off I plan to move into it without lying by simply planning to move into it. Now this is a legal loophole, but as long as I move into it for some reasonable period of time, I'm not lying if I say I plan to move in. So all I have to do is just move in for like a couple weeks and get all my mail forwarded to there, or not forwarded, just switch my mail to there, maybe even change my driver's license to there, open up the utilities in my name and pay the property taxes in my name. I'd legally move in and then simply move back out and rent it out after. They don't want you to be able to do any work yourself if it's for the purpose of, if you're just fixing it as a commercial project to do a rental. But you can do it yourself if you're planning to move in. Now, because this renovation process is going to take so many years, maybe they think like, oh, this loophole, that's messed up, because ultimately you're planning to rent it. But a lot of people do buy, rehab, rent, refinance, or house hacking. No, it's house hacking, where you move in and you rent part of the house, and then the tenant pays your mortgage, and then eventually you move out and you just rent out the house, and you just do that again. So because house hacking is a thing, it's like a legal gray area and definite loophole where it's not like I'm lying. You don't have to say like, in order to get a homeowner builder permit to do the work yourself and not have to hire licensed contractors to do everything, you have to promise us that you will never rent this house out for the duration of your whole life, and you have to live in this house, and you can never move your whole life. And you never have any options going forward after that. Once you say, I'm planning to move in, you can never move out and never rent it, ever. What ChatGPT told me is as long as it's not going to be within a couple years that you're going to rent it, you should be fine after you get these types of permits for homeowner builder. So as long as you move in order to not lie for like a couple weeks or whatever, and number two, it's going to be more than like 2 or 3 years before you rent it. So it's not like a quick flip and you get renters in there immediately. Then that would really be like, you just flat out lied. But if you're just doing a slow rehab and you're basically there every day, and you actually literally move in just to fulfill the letter of the law, and it's years before a renter ever goes in there anyways, then you should be fine with that loophole. Now, obviously, I'd prefer that they'd not do that they just do the homeowner builder permit without you having to say, I'm going to move in one day. With you saying, no, I'm just going to have it be a rental property. Why can't you do that? They put me into a box where literally I can't do real estate in their city unless if I do this. They gave me no choice, so I have to do this letter of the law um, playing games with them basically in order to proceed. Um, and legally, I am moving in. So you can't say I'm lying. I am going to move in, legally speaking. And it does not say, and when you do move in, it has to be for this amount of time before you can rent it. It doesn't say that. So as long as I'm moving in for some reasonable amount of time and not renting it right away after I'm done fixing it up, then I should be fine. So that's my stance on that. Um, the alternative is if you say, okay, no, I'm not planning to ever move in, then they'd say, okay, so you're just planning to rent. Yeah, I'm just planning to rent. Okay, then you can't get a homeowner builder permit ever, and you have to get a regular permit, and it has to be a licensed general contractor that pulls the permit, and he has to do all the work. You can't do anything DIY now, and you're out of the loop. And now, instead of the project being just the cost of materials, or even less than that, if you're getting the materials used, it could be like 1/5 the cost of materials that would be traditionally expected if you're salvaging a lot of the materials by just being thrifty. Um, so yeah, if they required that, I have to get the contractor to do all the work. Then we're looking at $70,000 to do the rehab, plus the $6,000 purchase cost, $76,000 to have a rehabbed home that I can now rent out. That would make me unable to do it. It would literally take me like 30 years to save that, I feel. Maybe 20. I mean, we're talking about I'd have to wait till a parent dies in my inheritance to even be able to do it. Like, just like it's over. So that's why my back's against the wall. Like, I have to get homeowner permits and do it myself to even have any shot of getting my foot in the door of real estate the Dave Ramsey way. So it's clear why, like, people start taking loans to get into real estate. But I'm trying to do the Dave Ramsey way for the peace of mind. And so I have to use homeowner permits. And so I have to do whatever is required legally to go that route, to do as much of the work myself as possible, to put sweat equity into it, to be able to even afford to get involved in real estate, because it's expensive. And this is the very cheapest way I could get my foot in the door. The very cheapest is if I can do the work myself, beginning with permitless, under the radar. And if it has to be on the radar, then I've got to do it as a homeowner builder permit, where I'm not paying others to do the work, because then the price skyrockets immediately. There's just no cheap way to do that. And so this is the only way I could keep the price down. And so I've got to say I'm going to move in, even though I'm only able to do that by the letter of the law. I have no intention of living in the ghetto long term or whatever. So you're able to, on a shoestring budget, rehab it if you're doing the rehab DIY, which is my strategy, because I'm doing, as I said, the Dave Ramsey method of all cash, but I don't want to have to be rich before I do it. I want to be able to get into real estate before I'm ever rich. Rich, relatively speaking, like, oh, I have like 100,000 cash that I can just do this with. That's pretty rich to me. But if you can put together 6,000 cash to buy a rundown, about to fall apart property that's been abandoned, and if you can put together like $4,000 cash to do the rehab work, then that's not really rich. Like, that's less than the price of a car. So anybody can save that if you just live frugally and save and live within your means. And that's what I did. And I'll be able to add more cash to that over time. So I'll eventually be able to expand how much I'm able to put into it, which I wouldn't have had to do. I believe I could have gotten the total rehab done for like $5,000. But now that I have to use contractors for certain stuff like electrical and plumbing, which they said you can't get homeowner permits for, I have to now save up for an electrician, and some for plumbing too, and possibly HVAC too. So no longer is it just all DIY and all salvage stuff. Now it's going to be under more scrutiny. I got to spend a little more and pay for other people's labor now. So I have to contribute a lot more money now, like maybe like 8 to 10,000 more than I expected. So now it's like $6,000 purchase cost, $4,000 rehab cost, plus $10,000 in contracting out these other tradesmen. So, and all the permit fees over the years too makes it more. So it's like $10,000 more. But I still am for 20,000 totally done, and I might be able to get the tradesman work cheaper than that. I might be able to do it with family connections, friends, and me offering to do work or help the tradesmen with some of the rough-in work, and them just kind of be more passive with it. Some might be willing to do that. I can hunt around to where I can have them pull permits for me and kind of guide me and be more of a consultant, and just cut the cost down. Maybe there's different ideas I've been thinking about. I also thought about, what if I offer like trading work for work, like I'll fix your car or do some remodeling at your personal home, or do some trades work that's non-permitted work, like smaller scale stuff at your house or some house you're working on. I do work for you, and then in exchange you do my electrical. You run like 5 outlets, and I fix your car and change the oil and do a brakes job in exchange for like 2 electrical outlets installed. Like, we do trades with somebody, and then I don't have to pay anything except like maybe the permit fee and a little bit of materials. Or even that's waived because I do more work for him on his car repair or home remodeling work or whatever than he provides in electrical services. So he actually covers the materials out of his pocket and covers the permit fee out of his pocket. So I'm able to get permitted work done in a trade agreement for no cash. I'm trying to keep the cash amount down as much as I can. So that's a really strong one that I'm going to be looking into potentially. The passive idea of I do the work, but they just kind of passively, they get me the permit and they just kind of like make sure everything's up to code and they inspect things and I give them video updates. I was told that a lot of licensed people won't do that. My dad said that he would never do something like that. And I wonder if other licensed people would say no to that. But I was told by ChatGPT some people would do that. So I want to explore all options. That's another possibility. So I might be able to get the cost back down to closer to like maybe like 15,000 total and all in. Maybe even, let's see, 6K purchase price plus all the permit fees. Maybe I could get it to like 10 or 12,000 total to have a fully rehabbed property for 12,000. That's insane. Like, that's really good if I can pull that off. So anything creative I can do, I'm going to try to do it. All right. So that was the runaround and drama and stuff with the building department. And I told you about the court. I didn't finish that. So let me pick up again to finish off that story. So went to court. The guy that summoned me and that put the red tag, I got to meet him. I told him I was just removing trash and trying to tarp the roof, which I'm thankful that's true. That's all I'd been able to do so far, and just shoring up a little area where I was putting my ladder was the other thing. I had pictures and everything of that. I had pictures of my permit. I had a legal defense just explaining all the dates and times and that I had already been working with the building department before I was summoned, and I was trying to get my permit before I even got this summons. I was prepared to just say all this stuff, but it turned out just so different than anything I could have expected. So basically, he came up to me. He told me, okay, where's your address? What's your name? Okay, blah, blah, blah. He then asked, did you ever get your permit? Can you show me that? I showed him the permit. And then he said, okay, that's great. You got your permit. Do everything through the building department going forward. I want to see permits for everything. Go through them. Don't just be renegade doing work without permits. That's our main issue. We want to see permits posted. That's it. That's our issue with you. I said, okay. And then he said, okay, well, that's going to be a $150 fine for working without a permit, and you'll be good to go. And I said, well, there's one thing I want to say, though. He said, what's that? I said, I was only doing trash removal and then tarping the roof. And the building department said they would not give me a permit to tarp the roof because that's under $300 job scope, and they won't give permits unless if it's over $300 in scope. So I couldn't have gotten a permit for the work I've done so far anyways because it's all been under $300 in job scope. And he said, "Well, I tell you what, um, I'll fine you 75 then." And I said, "Okay, I'm happy to pay the fine. I was just telling you." So he said, and I said, so in the future, if I start working on a abandoned property like this, you want me to get permits and post a permit right away on the window before I even get started? He said, "Yes, that's what we want to see, and then we'll leave you alone." I said, "Okay, that's good to know for future." He said, "All right, so 75, just wait for your turn, and I'll tell the judge and go from there." So then later on, after they'd went to everybody, I was listening to what they said to every person. I heard code inspectors talking to one person about, we saw a tire in your backyard and also a flat tire in one of the vehicles in your driveway. We need to see you get that flat tire dealt with and get that tire removed. And there's some brush against the side of the house that needs to be cut down. It's starting to get a little sloppy looking on the landscape there. And they were like, "Well, blah, blah, blah. The neighbor has even worse cut yard, and that's not fair." And they're like, "Well, we'll deal with your neighbor separately, but we're telling you we need your yard maintained to a certain reasonable level. You can't have it overgrown like that." And they're like, "Okay." So they said, "We'll give you a continuance, and in 30 days, you'll come back here to court, and you can then have it dismissed if you had it taken care of." And so they were doing a lot of continuances that day. Um, so anyways, I didn't get a continuance though. I just got the fine and then no more court date. So that was nice. Like I didn't want to have to come back and prove like how much progress I've made or anything, deadlines or whatever, because I'm a slow worker and it's a lot of work over there and that would be horrible. So fortunately, nothing like that happened. So anyways, I was just listening, trying to gather as much information as I could, just hearing what are the types of things they come after people for. That was very educational. Um, so anyways, then they said, everyone who's going to be a payer, move to this side of the court and sit in this area. And so whoever's going to be paying a ticket today moved over here. So I moved over to there. And then I was just waiting. And then the judge walked in. They said, all stand for the judge or whatever. So everyone had to stand up. One guy had on shorts. And one of the courtroom officials or something walked up and he said, "You can't wear shorts in here, sir. You're going to have to wait outside in the hallway." So that guy got ushered out and he walked out. So you have to dress with pants and like, I think just pants and shoes. Or maybe you can wear pants and flip flops. I'm not sure, but I was recommended to dress in like, khaki pants and like a button up shirt. So that's what I did. And they were pretty happy with that, I guess. But everybody was kind of dressed like for going to the club or going to church. Like people of the world dress kind of like they're going to a nightclub. So you're dressed kind of nicer than like maybe your normal day to day might be. You're supposed to dress nice-ish. It's called dressing in an attire that respects the judge and respects the courtroom. That's how they see it. Like if you don't dress nicer than day to day, then you're being disrespectful, which I think that's stupid and I disagree. And I think you should be able to dress however you want as long as it's not like distracting, like dressing like a hooker or something as a girl or something like that. But as long as it's like normal flip flops, shorts, whatever, like how I dress day to day, I don't think that should be an issue. And I don't think that's disrespectful at all. But that's the tradition and that's the excuse and that's what they say. So I went along with it. I'm trying not to get in trouble or whatever any more than I already have. So anyways, I went inside in the payer section and then they called up the first guy and he went up to the podium and he's like, okay, so they're like, "You have a bunch of junk on your lawn, sir?" And he's like, well, I used to have more, but I've been having health problems, so it's been hard for me to get to it. And I got rid of like 90% of the junk, but I got a bad knee or whatever. And he said, it's hard to keep up with it because people keep illegally dumping on my property. And she's like, well, you should have filed a complaint formally with the police department then, sir. And then he was like, okay. And he's like, well, I'm trying to take care of this stuff. It's just hard with my health, but I'm getting on it and I'm trying to do it. And they're like, okay, well, we'll give you a continuance. And you have till the 5th of next month. And then you're coming back here to court and it better all be cleaned up by then or whatever. So he had to come back. So they let him go and with a follow-up date. And that was pretty much like the pattern of everybody. Pretty much the exact same thing I just said. One lady came up and she was like, her and the judge were talking. Basically, they're like, oh, my contractor didn't pull a permit. And so now he's getting that done. And so that was my issue. And they're like, okay, well, we'll give you continuance and you need to get that permit posted. So stay on top of that. And she's like, okay. So then they took her, gave her an extension, a continuance they call it. So she had to come back again, I guess, to prove she got the permit. Maybe at that time, once she does post the permit, maybe they would give her a fine too. Also, I want to note that the judge did say everyone here that was summoned today has to pay a court fee. That will be $110. And everyone here that was summoned today will have to pay a minimum fine of $150. And everyone here that is in court today will also have to pay like a recording fee or something, maybe some other smaller fee, like a $40 fee. I don't remember. And I was like, man, this is going to add up. This is going to be like $300-$400. So I was like, man, this sucks. But then in practice, no, I ended up having to literally pay just the $75. That's it. So anyways, they called me up. I was like the 5th person called up. I went to the podium and I had my little stack of my legal defense and whatever, some pictures and just my explanation prepared and written down in notes form. And I had my permit copy and copy of photos of all the work I did, which was under the $300 scope, and I was willing to make that argument as well. And it turned out she was like, okay, I see you have a lot of violations, sir. Because who knows what the guy filed, like in the formal notice. I see you have all kinds of violations here, sir. And then the code enforcement official spoke up. And he said, oh, he cleaned it up, and he's got his permit out. No, he didn't even say he's got his permit out. He said he cleaned it up. He took care of it. And we're just going to give him a $75 fine. And she's like, well, what about all these violations and everything? He's like, he took care of it. He cleaned it up. He's good now. And then she said, okay, you're going to need to pay your court fee and your fine. Just go out into the clerk of the court's office down the hall and wait there, and you will pay your fine in cash today, correct, sir? And I said, yes. And then they said, okay, then head out there and get that taken care of. I said, okay. And then I walked out. And I was expecting it to be like the court fee plus the fine. So like $150 or $75 fine because he reduced it to beneath the minimum, stated minimum, the judge said. He gave me half that. And I guess she said you will have to pay the court fee, and they did not bill me for that. So that was pretty cool that behind the scenes, they don't even listen to the judge. They just waive that. I had to pay what they gave me the form to pay, and they didn't include that. So that was nice. And also, by the way, he said, do you have the cash to pay today? I said, no. He said, do you have a debit card? Because I did bring some cash, but not enough to pay, like, wait. No, I thought I only had like $60, and it was $75 fine. So I said I didn't have enough, and I didn't. But I ended up having more cash than I thought I did. So I would have had enough. But he said, do you have a debit card? I said, yes. He said, okay, we have an ATM in the front. You can get money that way. I said, okay, I'll do that. So after after I left the courtroom to go do that, which, by the way, I wanted to stay in the courtroom to listen to everybody else's cases to learn more about the legal system and how it works and what people get in trouble for and what to avoid. It would have been so helpful to learn more of what to avoid myself and what do they look for and how do they get people. And I just wish I could just go there and listen to more, because you don't know until you know. I have no idea what they are sticklers for. So anyways, that was unfortunate. But they told me like to go out and pay, so I was like ordered to do that, so I couldn't really stay. Like the judge told me to go do it. So anyways, I went to the ATM, I pulled out cash, I went to the clerk's office, I waited, I sat down after signing in. She called me up after some other lady had finished. She called my name. I walked up to the front desk. She gave me a white piece of paper that had my name and all my information. After a little while, she printed it, came back. It had my fine amount and what's due. And I gave her the cash. They take only cash or check, but I didn't have a checkbook. I gave her the cash. She did her thing, processed it, gave me a receipt, and I left. And I was able to go home. And I have no further court dates, no nothing, and I'm all paid up. So that was $75 for them. Oh, and by the way, this is the other thing. I told the code enforcement official, I've already paid a fine of $140, which I have the receipt here, to the building department. So I shouldn't be charged another fine, correct? And he said, no, that's their fine. This is our fine. We're a separate department. We do our own fine. So I had to pay double fines, which is, again, ridiculous to me. But they're just trying to get money. That's what my dad said. They're just money hungry. That's the whole point of this. It's not really about public safety or anything. It's really just about getting money. That's the sad truth of it all. So that just kind of gives you an idea about what happens in court if you get red tagged and how the process works, at least for one particular ghetto. Now, every ghetto might be a little different, but that can be helpful to get some kind of idea. I didn't see much information online about like what this process is like. So that was just me recording all this and putting it out there could help somebody too, like to know what to expect. But I never had to like make a defense. I never really got to say much to the judge. It was almost like the code enforcement official was my lawyer defending me from the judge. The judge was this just this angry, brutal, ruthless woman that just, my impression is like she just wants to rip your head off. She hates everyone. And it's like being called to the principal's office, and the principal hates all children, and you're a child having to stand in front of the principal, and you're in big trouble. It's not fun. And I would have been like fumbling and bumbling, trying to make my arguments, and she would have been like, why don't you call me Your Honor? I just picture like worst case scenario. Like, oh, I forgot. I called you ma'am. I should have called you Your Honor. I'm sorry. Like, I could have gotten more trouble. I don't know. I don't know if I'm like trained enough to do this. I haven't got any experience being in court. So I have some now though. One time I got a traffic ticket and I had to go to court one time, but I don't even know. I think I just said guilty. I said like 2 words and then I had to go pay the ticket. So anyways, I was glad that the code enforcement official pretty much like was telling her, just let it drop. We're dropping all charges. He's got his permit. He didn't say he's got his permit. He just kept saying some kind of code word to her that she would understand. He was like, he cleaned things up. It's taken care of. Those were his words. He would say that to the judge. I think he said that terminology with somebody else as well. Things are taken care of. He cleaned it up. He's okay now. Things are settled. we're good now. Like that type of vibes he's like saying to her in order to have her not pursue grilling you and scolding you and just making your life hell and just being really mean to you and trying to catch you on every little thing and just get you in big trouble and jack up the fines more and more and more and more and more and just find reasons to be more and more angry with you and demonstrate how you're like a lawbreaker and in big trouble. And then the longer you're up there, probably the more your fine will go up. That was the vibe I got. So you're hoping the code enforcement official calls off the attack dog, which is the judge, and tells her, back off, don't rip this one's head off. He's working with us. He's doing what we want him to do. So you don't have to try to ruin his life, judge. And she's like, oh, man. Like, she's like, okay, hopefully I'll be able to ruin the next person's life because I just love ruining lives. That's my favorite. That was the vibes I got. So I was like, man, this code enforcement official felt like my hero the way he called off this attack dog from ripping my head off. I'm like, man, he like helped me and he got me out of the court fees somehow behind the scenes. I didn't have to pay that. Unless if that's just an error on the city clerk's office that they were supposed to do it and they're just like, oh, not doing their jobs right. I don't know how that works, but they just never billed me for court fees. So that's how it worked. So when I say I made a mistake, it's like kind of a mistake, kind of not a mistake. Because in some way, I'm kind of glad I got to learn all of that. And now I kind of know what to expect if I got caught working without a permit. And I can weigh the pros and cons of whether to risk it in a case-by-case scenario. I'm not going to say that I'm never going to work without a permit again, because I still think the whole thing is just a money grab and it's worth the risk to work without a permit and it's not immoral. It's a gamble millions of people take, especially in the ghetto, but everywhere. It's just normal day-to-day life. The government's overreaching. But I know now that if I'm doing work on a very decrepit property, that's going to auto flag me. If I bought a house decently nice from the exterior, clearly not abandoned, clearly maintained to some degree, I would be much more likely to risk doing repairs indoors, especially. And it's highly unlikely that would ever be caught or become an issue at all. And I do all the work up to code, super high quality, excellent skill, excellent experience on my behalf, and go from there. Also, by the way, for like 15 years, I was a handyman for a landlord, and I did tons of stuff. I never got a permit, and I did all kinds of work. But maybe I don't even know if I needed a permit. It was all pretty small stuff, but some of it did get into electrical and plumbing, although it was minor, like replacing a ceiling fan, replacing a outlet switch. So I don't know if or outlet or a switch, light switch. I don't know if that would require a permit or not, but most likely it would require a licensed electrician if you touch anything electrical. That's how stupid the laws are. So I'm just like, whatever. It's idiotic. But I'm not positive. Maybe you can do that legally. I'm not sure, but I'm just going with spirit of the law, and I don't think it's wrong. I just try to focus on spirit of the law. So, oh, and by the way, if you call like a plumber, like anywhere, technically he's supposed to get a permit for any plumbing work. And plumbers never get permits unless it's a major, major job where they're likely to get flagged or caught. They don't do it. So it just shows new construction, they would do it. Or like a major digging job. Even sometimes on digging jobs, they don't pull permits. And I'm sure it's that way with all the other trades as well. So that's why I'm saying, it's so common, and they know it's so common that it's just a slap on the wrist. They don't even punish you. If you get caught, they just make you go pay a permit, and usually they don't even give you a fine. They'll put you on, no fine. They'll just put you as a contractor onto a watch list where, if you make another violation within 30 days or 60 days, then they'll actually take some kind of penal action against you. That's how much of a slap on the wrist it is. Like, they literally say, like, you're not even in trouble. You just get a warning. So that's why it's like the whole thing is it's like a joke. But definitely in the future, I will get permits for anything major, especially if it's like a rundown house. To even be working in there, I'll have to have a permit posted. That's for sure. And I got to be careful. Because, like I said, the building across the street got caught working without permits. They got a permit, but it was non structural only. They got caught doing major structural. Total demolition of the building ordered. Wow.